Alright everybody, here's the next job we're doing here on this Project 745i. This is self-leveling rear suspension. But before we get into it, some other stuff I've done is I've gone in and I've shampooed and vacuumed out all the carpet in here. I had a fan in there drying it. And then I've put on those calipers that I just rebuilt in the last episode. I need to bleed all the brakes when I'm done with all this. But self-leveling rear suspension here is going to get replaced with these two Bilstein shocks. The seller, when I bought this car, I asked him to include these in the sale just so I could get rid of this. So the way this system works is essentially the shock, all it is a hydraulic cylinder. That's why you've got this hose coming out of it here. This right here is called a pressure accumulator. And essentially this does the job of the shock absorber. So you still have your spring here so you can mount it in the car. But what this is just a hydraulic accumulator. So there is a membrane in here. I think it's a rubber. I don't remember exactly sure what it is. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But there's high pressure nitrogen gas on one side of it. And you have the hydraulic fluid that comes from the pump, comes in here and fills up this pressure accumulator till it reaches kind of an equilibrium. And then whenever you hit a bump, the piston in here moves up and down, which kind of forces fluid back into this. And then this rubber diaphragm in the accumulator acts as the shock absorber at that point in time. Further down here, underneath the car, can't really see it right now, but there is a little mechanical switch that's attached to the sway bar, which is again why all 745i's have a sway bar on them. And then over here in the back of the trunk, you have a standalone hydraulic pump. So they still had self-leveling suspension on other BMWs that came later. So I know the E24 6 Series, the M6 had it on it. I believe the E28 M5 had the same system on it with this pump that was standalone. I know on the other versions, the pump was kind of down in the wheel well, I believe where the spare tire was. I don't remember for sure where those were. But it's a really simple system. It's all entirely standalone. It's just a pain in the butt. So that switch that's under the car, if you can find a good one, is like $500, $600, $700, somewhere around there. I don't even want to know what this pump costs. The cylinders, if they start leaking like mine are, you have to get them rebuilt. So then you have to send those away to get them rebuilt. And then it's really kind of finicky. It's nice when it works, but it's just finicky. My last 745i, I insisted on keeping it on there, but it was a pain in the butt. So on this one, I've decided that I'm just going to go remove it, put in some conventional shocks. I know on the later systems, like the E34s, so E34s had self-leveling suspension on them on some versions of it. Some of it was optional. But the way theirs worked is they had lines coming off the power steering pump in the front in the engine bay. And then you had lines that ran under the car. So when you go to delete it, you have to remove the lines from under the car. You have to find a block-off plate for the pump and all this other stuff. This one's easy. You can just take everything out from under the car. My overall goal is I'm going to try to get the whole system out eventually. I might leave this hard line in here for now, but I'm going to take out the pressure accumulators and the essentially shock absorber. One other thing I forgot to mention is these springs that are on this are actually a weaker spring rate than normal, just because essentially this is doing all of your shock absorber. So these need to be weaker so they can squat down more, and then you'll still have the same compliant ride as you would normally. The system was optional on European spec other 7 series. I think you could get it all the way down to the 728. I don't know for sure on the 728, but I know on the 733 and the 735i, it was optional on there. And this thing is still actually holding pressure in it. That's nice, expensive. I think it's CHF 11 pentasyn fluid. So that's all going in the drain pan. I'll get you guys set up on time lapse and explain what I'm doing here later. So I got that accumulator out now. Literally, it's just, people call it a bomb. You can see why, because it kind of looks like a little bomb. But at this point in time, all that's left is essentially, it's just the same as a normal rear shock change. So there's a 22 millimeter bolt down here that needs to come out. I've already kind of cheated and I loosened this one up earlier. And the correct way to do it says to remove this rear parcel shelf back here. You also do have to remove the rear seat. So once you remove the rear seat, there's a hole here and another hole here where you can get these 13 millimeter nuts out of that. There is another hole that's like right back here somewhere, but I think I'm going to be able to get that done out of the trunk. So it's hard to see, but back up there, I can reach the other 13 millimeter nut that holds the top of the strut on. And then simply when that's done, you just take out the self-leveling shock and put in one of the conventional ones and you're good to go on one side. And so far that's one shock done. Still got to take out the lines and everything, but I'll do that another day. Really, I just kind of removed the one shock. And then, like I said, simply 22 millimeter bolt up here, 3 13 millimeter nuts up there. These lines, this one's 11 millimeters. This one is 14 millimeters. Overall, it's probably taken me 20 minutes to do one side. So I got to go do the other side, and then I'll plan on removing the lines and the hydraulic pump and showing you guys all that stuff too. So I said I was trying not to remove all those panels over there and this hat rack, as they call it, in the back. But of course, the last nut on the shock on the driver's side, I tried to get off with a 12-point ratcheting wrench, and it just started to round off. So now I've got my 6-point socket in there, and this is the only chance that I've got to get it off before finding a 13 millimeter extractor and all that other fun stuff. So I got pretty lucky here. I got the nut off, and in my random bucket of bolts that I've got around here, I happen to have a identical self-locking, I think it's an M6 flange nut. So that was lucky. So as the saying goes, every 30-minute job is one broken bolt away from being a 3-day ordeal, or in this case, it's one broken spring isolator away from being a 3-week ordeal. I had to go ahead and order one of those. What happened was I got the Bilstein shock in, and then for some odd reason at the top of the shock tower there's actually 6 bolts. 3 of them are not entirely lined up with the holes that are in the rear seat and the parcel shelf. So when I got this in, it wasn't entirely lined up on the bottom, and then when I switched the bolts on the top, the shock mount was way off, so I loosened the nut on top of the shock, and then I was trying to be lazy and not compress the spring, and I started to twist the shock mount on the top a little bit so it would line up more with the one on the SLS one. And then this is just old rubber, so it just split. So now I gotta compress the spring, take off the top mount, put on the new isolator, and then I can finally put this shock in. And by that point in time, it'll probably be about 3.5 weeks after I started this initial project. I'm just gonna wrap up this video here, but you can see I got the other shock in. It probably took me all of 10 minutes when I finally had the time to go compress the spring and replace that top mount. Later date, I'm gonna have to go in and remove all these hoses from underneath. They go kind of down there to a little valve block. There's a sensor down there. And then I haven't figured out how to get this pump out yet. I know there's a hose that goes in kind of somewhere down here, I think. Again, I'm just going to pull that out at a later date. Probably make another video on that showing the pump and the valve and everything. But that wraps this video up for now. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.